Greetings and welcome back to Academic Asafo. So in this video, will be a little bit more serious. I will be covering the Afrika Bambaataa saga at this point, which has really become a saga with all the developments that I've been watching since 2016. So I'm really just trying to give a quick summary of the events from 2016 till now. I'll try and be as concise as possible. If you're not up for this subject matter, no worries. Just click off and wait till the next video. But this will be more towards the social commentary aspect because I do think it is important that we talk about these issues, especially as Black men and how to deal with them. And with this story, I mean, this is one of the biggest stories in the hip hop world. This is one of the first stories that I could really that I really know of, that I could remember off the top of my head, that deals with boys, especially of this nature. We hear stories about girls and women, but this is really one of the first times um Black community had to deal with this type of issue publicly involving Black boys. And I'm going to give a concise summary. I'll just get right into it now, and I'll just do my best to try and keep all the events in orderly fashion. So we start off with this story from the New York Daily News. Africa Bambaataa molested me by Ronald Savage. This was actually the YouTube video that came out. There was actually an article, and Ronald Savage was pretty much the first victim that came out with his story publicly. This is the iconic picture that really set the movement in motion to hold Afrika Bambaataa accountable. So from here, we have his story. So Ronald Saji gave his story. He also said there was other victims, dozens of other victims. He wasn't just a singular incident. African Bambaataa, if you don't know, is considered one of the founders of hip hop, Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation. Um, many many timeless records that he has. It's the same situation with R. Kelly. R. Kelly put out a lot of music, especially a lot of music that hit the charts. So African Bambaataa is the same way. This was in the 80s era. So this was the pre-golden era of the 90s that this situation happened. So this is an old situation, but we'll just be moving right along. So after this story came out, several Black news outlets covered the story as well too. So Sonetter was one of the first to start covering the story. So Ronald Savage, he just he gives more interviews. You have Doggy Diamonds, who also gave coverage. As we see here, Ron Savage, Africa Bambaataa made me do it with my sister's boyfriend. And then Ronald Savage talks about African Bambaataa in his book. So African Bambaataa, he was based in the Bronx, and during that time there was a lot of poverty going on. So African Bambaataa used his influence and his celebrity to lure young boys and essentially groom them and use them for his own pleasure. He used his celebrity status. He also took advantage of uh, took advantage of unprivileged children at the time, children from broken homes, and he positioned himself as a father figure. So I just want people to remember that the father figure and the celebrity status was used together. So African Bambaataa allegedly had a book where he put pictures of all his groomed boys in there, and he basically took pictures and recorded some of the acts, and he had a book, a little black book, where he basically compiled everything. So this book hasn't been found. It is to be alleged, but other people have spoke about this book as well too. So even Lovely T, a tea blogger, covered this story as well. I think there's some other tea bloggers that covered this story, but Lovely Tea is one of the biggest ones outside of the mainstream news. The mainstream news didn't really pick up the story other than the daily New York news. So it was essentially Black YouTube that was covering this story. So as another victim, uh, formerly known as Poppy, aka Hassan Campbell, he was another. He was also an initial victim that came out with his story as well too. So after Ronald Savage came out with his story, Hassan came out with his story as well too. So Hassan, he's now a YouTuber, a big YouTuber now. Um, yeah, so basically he got his start from coming out with his story, but apparently he already had issues with Afrika Bambaataa, and there was stuff going on behind the scenes in terms of the Zulu Nation, and him getting to admit him getting Afrika Bambaataa to admit his wrongdoing. So, from Hassan's own words, he didn't know Ronald Savage would come out with his story. So that's why he decided to come out with his. So there was a press conference organized by Sonetter TV. He had Hassan come out, and many people in the conscious community at that time, 2016. Hassan was here, Ronald Savage was here. Many people in the New York area decided to come out for this press conference because it was a serious thing. Even young Pharaoh was at the press conference as well too. Man, times have changed. So moving on, this is Doggy Diamonds here as well. So people decided to defend Afrika Bambaataa. We see here KRS-One, another prominent figure in the hip hop community. Essentially, KRS-One said that Afrika Bambaataa's contribution to hip hop is bigger than any allegation or any story coming out against him. So that's essentially what he said. So Hassan, he comes out with his response to Afrika Bambaataa, and you could clearly see what he said on Doggy Diamonds, and I'll just leave it at that. So moving right along, so Hassan, he's doing interviews as well too. So Flip the Script is another news outlet that covered the story. He did two interviews with Hassan. So he did the first one, the initial one, and then he had a second one where Hassan sort of gives an update. So I'll get back to this update. But after that, the story came out. We had several people come out with their own stories. Well, not their own stories of being victimized, but their own stories of what they saw being an outsider looking in. So Jack the Thriller breaks his silence on Afrika Bambaataa and much more. Raheem of the Furious Five and what he witnessed behind the curtain with Afrika Bambaataa. Melly Mel, everyone knew about Afrika Bambaataa's accusations, hip hop's best kept secret. And of course, we have Lord Jamar. Rumors Afrika Bambaataa gave for 20 years lying about victim. When he says lying about victim, he's basically referring to when African Bambaataa said he didn't know Ronald Savage when the accusations first came out, but that was proven to be a lie. He did indeed know Ronald Savage. There was no question about it. So back here. So in this podcast, Hassan basically gives an update, and this was in 2018. Gives an update about the situation and what happened. And essentially, when Ronald Savage came out, when Hassan came out, the entire internet decided to attack them. It seems like the entire internet did decide to attack them through their YouTube channels. They tried to say that they were willing participants. They tried to say that they were boyfriends of African Bambaataa. They tried to say that they essentially wanted to be with Bambaataa in that way. And this is where we start to get into the narrative of now the switching from them being boys, being preteens, or not preteens, but early teens, into being willing participants, boyfriends. So that's what the internet was saying. Saw Netter actually, who gave the platform to Hassan, was actually one of the main people saying this, basically, essentially saying at 16, you should know if you're gay or not. And I do agree with that sentiment. I don't, it's not even that I disagree. The problem here is that it's not about a random person grooming children. We're talking about a person who is in a position of power grooming children. And not only somebody who's in a position of power, but somebody who made themselves a father figure as well too. So this is not an issue of being a willing participant. It doesn't matter if they're 13, 14, 15, 16, or 17. If they're underage, they're underage, in my opinion. And with what was going on during that time, a lot of broken homes, Bambaataa coming in to take advantage of the situation. People are missing the point of that father figure status and that celebrity status rolled into one. Because imagine your father tried to do something like that to you at a young age. That's what I think a lot of people are missing when they try to discredit the stories. But apart from Ronald Savage and Hassan, there are dozens of other victims who haven't come out with their story. Some people have come out with their story, but there's dozens and dozens of other victims that haven't come out with their story as well too. And all this information I learned over the years just watching. So this is a very brief. I know I'm going very fast. I know I'm speaking with a definitive tone um when it comes to these allegations, but I don't believe that these are allegations. I believe there was I believe he took advantage of these children. There's too many people that came out with the same stories, saying the same things, victims and outsiders all saying the same thing. So I do not think that this is all false or this is some type of government attack against Afrika Bambaataa. Afrika Bambaataa is also linked to Dr. York, who was another prominent sexual assaulter of children as well too. But I won't get into that because that's a whole different kind of worms. Um, when it comes to these allegations, I really feel like we need to be a little bit more vigilant. And this was the first big public one, as I said before. So I think it's really important and how we deal with this situation so that other victims could come out without feeling like they're going to be attacked. It's the same thing with women. they have a tendency to come out with their stories later on because they need to build up that courage. They see how victims are treated. It's no different with victims who are boys. So the father figure of African Bambaataa, the father figure, him being a father figure to a lot of these children back in the day, and his influence was really what we should be looking at. Because if you really think about it, this is a problem we just deal with in our own community. But before I get on to that, actually, even between Ronald Savage and Hassan Campbell, they've gotten into, I guess, the internet beef, attacking each other. Like I said, Son was the one that caused a lot of this narrative from being victims to being participants. So Son has said stuff about Ronald Savage as well too. Hassan Campbell, Hassan Campbell and Ronald Savage has gone at each other. Another prominent media figure, Star, has given a platform to both of them, and Star, Ronald Savage, and Hassan has gotten into it with each other as well too. So like a lot of the people that, well, I wouldn't say a lot of the people, but some of the initial people that broke the story, Star, Son ended up getting into it with both of these people as well too. So for a very long while, it was a lot of internet attacks against Hassan, against Ronald Savage. All this while everybody is essentially fighting with everybody. That's the period that I seen everybody fighting with everybody. Nobody was talking about African Bambaataa anymore. African Bambaataa was just an afterthought in all of this. It's either Hassan's gay, Ronald Savage is gay. It was just a complete mess. Very disappointed to see how black men deal with each other and with this situation. But it continued and it carried on essentially. It died down, it simmered down essentially. And then we get into about a year ago, I think almost 2 years now, we have a journalist named Layla Wells from Chicago. She puts out a documentary called Trapped in a Culture. It was originally called Zulu Nation, Hip Hop's First Gay Family. She did that title for shock value, but later changed it. But I'll explain why she decided to change it. But she came out with a 44-part documentary talking to some of the victims. So we have Ronald Savage, we have Hassan before he became really big on YouTube, essentially. This was early. I want to say this was 2017 that she did this interview after the allegations came out. And she really did a good job documenting um really just the abuse going on with the Zulu Nation, um, perspectives from different people. She talked to child care youth workers. She really did an excellent job documenting all of this. So essentially, this documentary brought everything back up again. The attacks ramped up again. Everything just came up again, essentially, especially with the narrative that they were willing participants, they weren't really victims, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now, essentially, we are at a time where, okay, but even before, so after the documentary, John Doe comes out, a John Doe, so another victim comes out and says that he's going to sue Afrika Bambaataa. Because originally Ronald Savage said he was going to sue. He was actually instrumental in getting a act passed called the Child Victim Act passed, but he didn't use it to sue Afrika Bambaataa. Hassan Campbell said that he never wanted to sue Afrika Bambaataa when he came out with his story. So two of the main people basically decided that they were not going to sue Afrika Bambaataa. And this is the reason why it dragged out for so long, because there was nobody ready to step up to the plate and sue Afrika Bambaataa until John Doe. So John Doe came out after he seen the documentary Trapped in the Culture, and John Doe is part of the reason why Layla Wills changed the name from hip hop's Zulu Nation hip hop's first gay family to Trapped in a Culture. So John Doe essentially launched a civil suit against Afrika Bambaataa after all these years, finally, and the case is in motion essentially. So now what is going on is now Ronald Savage, this gentleman right here, we've seen crying, is essentially saying that Afrika Bambaataa essentially didn't sexually assault anybody. Now he's saying that everybody was of age and that he's really defending Bambaataa at this point now. So he's taking a complete turn. He continues to attack Hassan Campbell. And essentially, that's where we're at with the case. So I wanted to, I mean, all of this is very unfortunate. I don't know why Ronald Savage, I can't, I can only speculate to why Ronald Savage is talking about this, is defending African Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation now after all these years, after this iconic picture of him. I really just think he's just being manipulated to do damage control essentially. He did great work with getting that act passed. He didn't act on his own act, or I wouldn't say his acts. He was part of pushing that act forward, I should say. But it's just really unfortunate. And I think these are the issues that we need to deal with as Black men, not dating issues, not issues dealing with women, but issues dealing with the boys and the men. And if you really think about it, if we look at this situation here with Jesse Lee Peterson, I want to make a quick comparison. So this whole issue of Hassan and Ronald Savage and everybody being willing participants, right? So I'm not going to explain who Jesse Lee Pearson is. He's a YouTuber as well too. Like I'm not going to explain his type of content, but he's a very prominent YouTube figure, and he had allegations of grooming men essentially into some sort of weird sex cult or something. He's just been sexually assaulting men. These weren't boys, these were grown men. Okay? These were grown men that came out with their stories. That's one of the victims. He was a grown man, he was not underage. And here are other victims as well too who came out with their stories. So white people, they don't care if they don't care what age you are. They don't care how young, how old. They're just looking at the aspect of Jesse Lee Peterson using his influence to groom and be a sexual predator. And they don't think it's okay, so now they're coming out against him and saying something. And that's essentially the point that I want to end off with. Um, we really need to watch people. Really need to check and watch people who are prominent figures in our community, so then they can just So they can't just come in and do whatever they want and run amok. Um, like I said, the issue of Bambaataa being a father figure is very key in this situation because people want to dismiss it as underage children making the decision. Firstly, underage children can't make the decision even if they wanted to, and that's why they're underage. And secondly, we can't expect underage children to turn against a father figure, somebody who's been in their life, somebody that they know has been in their life, um, even in some cases giving them resources as well too when they're coming from broken homes. We can't expect underage children to turn against or speak out against somebody that they see as their father figure. So I know Hassan is not perfect. He a lot of said and done a lot of crazy things on YouTube outside of this whole situation, but I just see him as a victim. I see him as somebody that hasn't gotten the full help that he needed, especially coming out as a victim and being attacked right away. He should have had counseling. He should have had a lot of resources available to him, but what he got was being attacked. And dozens of other victims have seen the saga that has gone on, and it stopped them from coming out with their stories. So we really just need to do a better job in supporting anybody, boys and girls, who come out with their stories, or if they're men or women when they decide to come out there with their stories. Listen to them and get all the facts, essentially. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. In the next video, I'm going to give another update into where the case is at now. And yeah, that's all. Let me know what you think. Have you heard about this story? Have you not? Give me your thoughts in the comment section. And that's it until the next video. Peace.